Hi, everyone. This is Josh Mitchell, a computer engineering student at Cal State Fullerton, graduating with the class of 2021. This is the presentation for my project, Modern Day Moneyball. I hope you all enjoy it. I had quite the fun time putting this whole thing together and spending countless hours on it.
9 games. Lines this one out towards straightaway center field.
This is Mike Trout. Ever since Trout made his full season debut in 2012, he's been one of the best players in baseball. He's won the AL MVP 3 times, been an All-Star 8 times, and has already had a more valuable career than 99.6% of players to ever play the sport, and is only 30 years old. And he can do this.
Drifting out toward right center, Trout at the wall, leaps up, and he makes the catch! Mike Trout with another spectacular grab!
With Trout being a generational talent in the sport of baseball, one can only hope that his team would find the same degree of success that other generational superstars have found with their teams in other sports, such as LeBron James and Peyton Manning. Let's see how that worked out. In 7 of the 8 seasons that Mike Trout has played for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, they have not made the playoffs. And in 2014, when they did make the playoffs, they were quickly swept by the Kansas City Royals in 3 games.
And there's a drive to right by Eric Hosmer, and it is gone! Eric Hosmer, a 2-run shot.
The amount of losing the team has done over the past 8 years only becomes magnified when you realize that they've spent $1.274 billion on their roster to find the same degree of success as teams such as the Padres and Marlins, teams that have spent $681 and $611 million on their rosters respectively. In addition to the atrocious spending of over $1 billion and poor financial management, the team has been linked to a number of scandals that include but are not limited to giving a 5-year, $125 million contract to a player that is a cocaine addict and child abuser, having an employee give out oxycodone and other drugs to players, which resulted in the death of pitcher Tyler Skaggs, another employee named Bubba, who would give opposing pitchers a foreign substance to help them beat the Angels through cheating, and a pitching coach, as it's just been released, that likes to sexually harass women and is now being investigated by Major League Baseball. With all factors considered, the money, the losing, and all the scandals, it points to a lack of leadership within the organization at an executive level, and more importantly, a general manager that uses, as Jonah Hill quotes in Moneyball, medieval thinking in buying players that are supposed to help the team win. To solve this epidemic and the financial crisis that the Angels face, we're going to go back in history and rewrite it, starting with October of 2011. On October 29th in 2011, the Angels hired Jerry Dipoto as their general manager, and he would serve his tenure for 5 years. This time, they're going to interview one more candidate and hire them. The Angels will hire Josh Mitchell as their next general manager. Welcome to Modern Day Moneyball. In order to be successful in the general manager's role, one must have a clear definition of what the responsibilities of a general manager are and how they go about their business in creating a team that essentially is able to compete for a playoff spot every single season. In order to compete for a playoff spot, the past 8 years from 2012 to 2019, the average amount of wins to make the playoffs has been 89.4 wins. Out of the 86 teams that won 90 or more games from 2012 to 2019, only 5 did not make it. A 90 win record is what the aim should be for the simulation every single year. And in order to win those 90 games, the team must score a certain amount of runs opposed to the certain amount of runs allowed, which can be calculated using baseball's Pythagorean theorem. Once there is a clear understanding of the amount of runs that need to be scored, the general manager can then approach other aspects of his job, which include front office relationships, salary cap and finances, the statistics to value, how to treat free agency, player extensions, the trade and trade deadline, the player draft, international free agency, and managerial relationships to ensure that the team is built in a way so that it's able to compete for those 90 wins every single season. Although there's not enough time to explain every single category that was previously mentioned, the written report contains an in-depth guide to every single aspect. The next step was to collect a great deal of data to make the simulation as realistic as possible, as if I were in the executive's shoes at the time of the decisions being made. In order to collect all the necessary data, The beautiful soup library was used in the Python coding language to collect all the data from the HTML tables that were posted on all the necessary websites that I wanted. Once all the data was scraped from the web with the Python scripts, it was then stored into a database called SQLite, which uses a C language library to maintain and keep all data necessary to be organized and sorted any way the user wants. This allowed for 226,864 data points in total to be stored to SQLite. Now that the responsibilities of the role have been explained and the data has been collected, it's time to talk about the approach that I will use to try and outdo the real-life team. The real-life team used for the purpose of this experiment what I call the all-in model. The all-in model features a very aggressive approach on a year-by-year basis where the goal is to try to go all in to win a championship every single year. This includes but is not limited to spending an excessive amount of money on superstar free agents and trading away future prospects at the trade deadline to try to acquire more all-star talent. While this approach could produce a healthy amount of success in the early stages, if this is taken on a year-by-year basis, the team will quickly become depleted of its resources, and when it tries to go all in after year 5 or 6, it won't have any more resources to try and gain more talent, quickly falling into the black hole. I would classify the Angels as the epitome of an all-in team just because they've signed free agents like Josh Hamilton, Albert Pujols, CJ Wilson. They've traded top prospects in the past for names like Zach Greinke and David Freese, and this quickly caught up to them after 2014, where they had no talent and no farm system left because of all the moves that they made. Instead of the all-in model, I would like to propose a new model called the homegrown model. And this model consists of building talent within, drafting and developing the talent you're given, never trading away any players unless they're past the age of 29, and instead of spending big amounts of money on superstar free agents and wasting the budget, spending money to grant the players that you currently have on your roster to contract extensions. The only free agents that will be signed will be low-level free agents that will be used to fill holes in the roster. This model will result in the team looking a whole lot different. For example, players like Gene Segura, Mike Clevenger, Randall Grichuk, and Sean Newcomb will be featured on the roster, and free agents like Justin Smoke, Asdrubal Cabrera, and Jason Castro will be signed to contracts. Although a lot of these names are not all-star talent and have not found a whole lot of success in their careers, they should be able to at least produce at an above average level, which can be measured by OPS+. The complete rosters for the homegrown model and how they compare to the real-life team that was used are once again found in the paper, but unfortunately, I do not have enough time to explain every single move and the thought process that went into it. Now that the models are established, along with the data collected and the general manager responsibilities understood, we can talk about the experiment itself. The experiment will consist of simulating the previously explained models 10 times each to see which model is better. The years will be from 2012 to 2019, and each year will be simulated 10 times. This adds to a total of 80 simulations for each model and 160 in total. And the simulations will be conducted on a software application called Out of This Park Baseball 21. This product was created by a fellow software engineer and can be used to simulate real-life time, historical, and any sort of baseball that you could possibly ever dream of. Let's see if I was able to assemble a better team than the one that was assembled in real life. When talking about the results, one of the first things to notice is the finances. The real-life approach spent $1.274 billion on the roster from 2012 to 2019. The homegrown model that I proposed only spent $832.6 million, or 65.35% of what was spent. And in total, the Pythagorean theorem had the all-in approach, the Angels real-life approach, winning 629.3 games over the course of those seasons, and the homegrown model winning 680.4 wins, or 51.1 more wins. And as hypothesized, the real-life model featured one that was a significant decline over the course of 8 years, whereas the homegrown model that I proposed offered much more sustainable growth that can be used in the long run due to the excessive amount of funds available and the number of players that are constantly being brought up from the farm system. And while these results are very promising, there are a few areas that I would like to include in this report for why they could be skewed so heavily in my favor. 1. Since I signed players that originally signed to other teams in real life, the teams that would have signed those players were slightly weaker when they were, giving the Angels an easier time to compete against. The second would be cognitive bias. While during the simulation I set strict rules in place for myself on which players to keep and which players to let go of, I was still able to recognize certain players from their success in the major leagues in 2019 versus players I'd never heard of, therefore giving me more of a motive to sign players that I already knew of. And with that thought, that concludes the presentation. And I recognize I'm at the 10-minute limit that was set, so I'd just like to put out a thank you to the University Honors Program and Dr. Perez for allowing me to do research on a topic I'm so interested in, and also Professor Brushke for assisting me and mentoring me through this whole process for the entire year. It's been quite the process. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoyed my research.